Welcome to Our Own Voice, a partnership in mental health awareness in cooperation with NAMI Wichita and KSUN Community Radio. NAMI is a national alliance on mental illness. We are the largest grassroots advocacy network for people with mental illness and their family members, with over 800 national affiliates and 13 Kansas affiliates, with NAMI Wichita being one of those 13. We provide awareness, support, education, and advocacy for people affected by mental illness. Our purpose here is to provide a community conversation on KSUN Radio that gives insight into what it's like to live with a mental illness. Our intention and hope is that our program will change attitudes, assumptions, and stereotypes about people with mental health conditions, and in so doing, we will stop the stigma associated with mental illness. My name is David Larson. I am very pleased and proud to be your host today, and I am a person living with mental illness. I am in recovery for major depression. Like everyone, I struggle with the ups and downs of emotions and the challenges of being fully human, but I am doing great, and I know I have many gifts to offer my family, my friends, and my community. Now, before I get too far into the program, I want to introduce David Peterson, our executive producer. Hello, David.
Hello, David.
Hello, and our technical producer is Matthew. Matthew, hello.
Greetings, David.
And Mike, you are our helper. Hello.
Yes.
And so
I'm trying to help.
Trying
to be helpful.
You three here get to meet our guest today, which is Carlos. Hello, Carlos.
Hey, David. How are you?
Doing great. How about you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to start off right away and ask, where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born in Mexico City and I grew up there.
Okay.
I lived for about a year in Tijuana, but went back to Mexico City. And,
okay.
Came here to the States 17 and a half years ago.
17 and a half years.
Yes.
Okay. Well, while you were in Mexico City, you graduated from high school there.
I graduated from high school and college.
What was the mascot of high school there?
Our mascot was a squirrel.
Okay, the squirrels. Now, the reason why Mike is laughing so hard is because we quizzed him earlier and he failed the quiz. So that's why.
If I would have guessed squirrel, I think he would have punched me.
Not true.
Well,
It was supposed to be a smart animal. That's the point.
It is a smart animal. Very
thought
smart.
that Rocky the Flying Squirrel was very intelligent.
Yes, exactly.
Much more intelligent than Bullwinkle.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Exactly. So, in fact, if you see some of those some of those videos on YouTube,
The old cartoons.
No, the videos of the squirrels that they get trained to go through all the different motions. Yeah, they can run mazes and all sorts of things.
Right, but there is a segment of the population who believes that they are tree rats.
Tree rats? No,
Tree rats?
I don't believe
I
that.
haven't heard that.
Yeah,
Well, so.
Go ahead.
So, Carlos, I'm going to go ahead and ask you, do you have any family members who are connected with mental illness in any way?
Well, right now we're having the situation that my father-in-law is suffering from dementia.
Okay.
He's been in it maybe for the last 6 years. He cannot put together a story, tries to tell you a story, and he cannot put it together and tries again, and it comes out different, and it's a difficult situation for my mother-in-law.
Yeah,
Take
exactly.
care of him, He has to wear diapers. He cannot go out on his own on the streets. They want to keep him at home most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a struggle.
Yeah,
It's hard.
that
Also
would
for
be
my
difficult.
wife, of course, yeah.
Yeah. So, the next question is a little bit more difficult, and that is, how did you come to the States and get connected with counseling?
Okay, well, I came to open a business here in the United States, and through the networking we were doing for the business, I became part of the board of Higher Ground, Alcohol and Drug Treatment Center for Hispanics.
Okay.
And as I saw when my business was going to go down and we had to close it, I asked them to refer me to some of their funding sources for some kind of job in the financial field. I have some financial experience. So they did refer me to a couple of companies here in Wichita, but I had to get a sponsorship for a work visa, and they would not do that at that time. But then Higher Ground offered me that, and if I would become a counselor, an alcohol and drug counselor, they needed a Hispanic bilingual person to deal with their clients that were mostly male, most of the counselors were female, and it was hard for the clients to pay attention to the females, tell them what to do and what not. So we broke a deal, and I became a counselor.
Okay,
Went to-
that is awesome.
I went to college and worked there for 4 years doing
All right.
outpatient treatment.
Okay, and so your training in counseling is with substance abuse.
Substance abuse, yes.
Okay.
Basically, yeah.
Now, our listeners may be wondering, and we're coming up close to a break here, but I'll make it really fast. Our listeners may be wondering why we have someone who is dealing with substance abuse on a mental health show. Well, because there is a connection, and we will be talking about that connection when we come back from our brief messages. So this is Our Own Voice on KSUN Community Radio. We are going to take a quick break, and we will be right back with Carlos. Welcome back to Our Own Voice, a partnership in mental health awareness in cooperation with NAMI Wichita and KSUN Community Radio. NAMI is a national alliance on mental illness. Our Own Voice is intended to humanize the misunderstood, highly stigmatized topic of mental illness by showing that it's possible and common to live well with a mental health condition. Now, Carlos, before the break, or actually during the break, we were talking about your ability to counsel. And you want to share with us the cultural aspect as to why it worked out for you to be the counselor there?
Well, as we were talking, basically the Hispanic men that are mostly the clients at this Higher Ground Treatment Center don't like to pay attention in public to females. Like we were explaining, mostly the households are kind of run by females, and it's a kind of matriarchal situation. But in public, you don't pay attention to other females in front of other people. So it worked pretty well for me because I could share with them what I have done, in my marriage and what I do at home, help with the chores and so on. And they would be a little bit surprised, a little bit kind of maybe more open-minded into what they could do and not be seen as a no macho man, but more a cooperative situation in which they can help out and then be a better person in their marriage, in their family, and all that. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I also want to go back to something I previously said in the last segment, and that was that there is a connection between mental health and substance abuse.
Right.
And that is usually called dual diagnoses.
Right.
Right? So what is your experience with the dual diagnosis?
Well, after I worked at High Ground, I went to work for Substance Abuse Center of Kansas, and there I worked in the 4-time DUI program. But the Substance Abuse Center of Kansas also had a program called Intensive Case Management, ICM, and it was basically created for people with dual diagnosis. So what happened? Well, as time went by and people were treating alcohol and drug, they realized that mental health situations were being addressed by the person that was suffering them by using a certain substance for depression, for example, maybe alcohol or cocaine, maybe for frustration, marijuana, for anger management problems, they would use heroin and so on. So they saw that this was always connected. So in other programs that Substance Abuse Center of Kansas has, usually clients get discharged after a certain time, after certain goals are met, and they can go on their way. But in the ICM program, they are never discharged. They know that they have to continue with that support system and keep treating both sides of the situations. Because if you don't treat the alcohol and drug part, then the mental health part kind of starts popping out really hard, or the other way around.
Yeah.
So that's why they need the support system for long term.
Well, and also from my own understanding of what little I've encountered with it in my own healing of my mental illness, there is there's a sense that the substance abuse, people treat that like a medicine,
Right.
and they use that as the medicine to get over the mental issue, which doesn't do it, doesn't
Exactly.
work.
They're
But
self-medicating.
yeah,
It may work at the beginning. It does. Alcohol and drugs start working at the beginning, but then as time goes by, it stops getting that effect of healing, quote unquote, the mental health situation. You need authentic drugs that are already studied and proven to really be able to
to
treat
deal
this.
with them.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So, so in your experience, have you experienced more people with, say, substance abuse disorder and schizophrenia, or substance abuse disorder and depression, or substance abuse disorder and bipolar?
Well, one story that it really hit home with me was when I was managing the 4-time DUI. I was a case manager for people that had 4 DUIs or more, lifetime. They were under parole. And this client of mine had schizophrenia. And he told me at the beginning of the assessment, usually in the assessment, that's part of the questions, some mental health questions. And he shared with me that he had schizophrenia. He was an older man, and maybe around about 60 or so. And he was very concerned that he was going to be without his grandkids because he was drinking. So we worked a little bit more on the alcohol and drug part, and he realized that with that he would be able to keep seeing his grandkids.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So, but that's interesting that he was more focused on the drug and alcohol portion and not the mental illness per
Right,
se.
right. And he realized that if he took his schizophrenia medication, he would be able to maintain that, without getting into trouble and not having to drink a lot and then get into more trouble. So he was aware that he had to balance that.
Well, I have to take a break now. This is Our Own Voice on KSN Community Radio. We are talking with Carlos about mental illness. We're going to take a quick break and be right back after these messages.
Our Own Voice is brought to you by NAMI. If you would like to learn more about the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the programs we offer, or get involved, please visit NAMI.org.
Welcome back to Our Own Voice, a partnership in mental health awareness in cooperation with NAMI Wichita and KSN Community Radio. NAMI is a National Alliance on Mental Illness. Now, Carlos, just to update our listeners on this, you can do counseling for substance abuse, and you have also dealt with people who are dual diagnoses.
Right.
Right. So you're familiar with the whole issue of both a substance abuse issue and a mental health issue at the same time.
Right. Yes.
Okay. In fact, we had you on our panel at the National Minority Mental Health Awareness event that we did in July.
Yes. Yes.
And it was absolutely wonderful having you there.
thank you.
Because
Thank
you
you.
added a wonderful flair and a different flavor to some of the answers that were coming across the board. So for those people who don't know about that, plan next year for the Minority Mental Health event, which will happen in July sometime. We don't know when yet. I don't think, at least.
I just thought of a question.
Yes.
What percentage of people would you say with mental illness also deal with substance abuse?
You know, I have the exact answer for that, but
Do you really?
I'm gonna let Carlos go.
and actually, I just studied that part, but I think it's a high percentage. Supposedly, for the general population, people that suffer the alcohol and drug problems are around 10%. And among those, I think maybe at least half may have some mental health situation. I don't know what numbers you
Yeah,
have, David.
this says according to 2014, so it's not actually accurate today, but 2014 National Survey on Drug Use and Mental Health, 7.9 million people in the U.S. experienced both a mental disorder and substance use disorder simultaneously, and more than half of those people, 4.1 million to be exact, are men.
And so give us those numbers again. What was it?
So 7.9 million people in the U.S. experience both a mental health disorder and substance abuse disorder. So simultaneously. And of more than half of those people, which is 4.1 million to be exact, are men. And that, by the way, was taken from the NAMI.org website. So if people wanted to look at that information themselves, they can go to NAMI.org. So, yes, you were going to say something, David.
I was just thinking of Carlos's past as far as working with these people. Do you have any other stories that would be?
Yes.
Enlighten
Oh,
me.
yes. When I was working at Substance Abuse Center of Kansas, usually they're basically located at what is called like the homeless path. People that are walking from the Lord's Diner towards the bridge under the river, to sleep there and whatnot. There's places where they stop and drink. And there was this client of ours that actually was a client of the ICM program. That I worked there 10 years, so sometimes I would meet him in the lobby or when I was walking around and got to know him. He got to know me. When he was clean and sober, he was sitting in the lobby waiting for his case manager to show up. And he was like a little shy, little mouse, quiet and looking down and a little nervous, But when he was under the influence, he was very social, very talkative. And he would be talking. So what I was sharing before this program is that one day he was walking into the parking lot and I was walking out to my car and I saw him. And he said, "Hi, Carlos, how are you?" And, I knew he was under the influence, so social. And I asked him if he wanted to go to the detox center. I knew he had been there before. It was a familiar place for him to be. And he would just change the subject and keep talking and laughing and whatnot. So I asked him again. And he said, "You know what, Carlos? Actually, I'll go to detox, but before, I'm going to get a little bit more drink." So
Just have one more drink. Just one more.
I'm going to get really drunk before I go there. So, okay, yeah.
And that's an interesting.
Go ahead.
Oh, it's interesting that you said that because there's a lot of people that even I know that either drink or smoke because they feel like they're more social or they're more relaxed. You
Right.
know what I mean? And it's like on one hand, it's like you want them to like feel good, but also you don't want them to. You don't want like drugs and alcohol to be the reason why they feel good. You know
Right,
what I mean? Because
right.
then it becomes something like, oh, I need it. Like I can't go without this or that in order to be myself.
And in some people that are using alcohol and drugs, it may be a seeming situation. But in this case that I'm talking about, it was a real thing, that he was actually more social and more talkative when he was under the influence. It really changed his behavior.
Wow.
You could tell. And that is where you can see that there's some mental health situation going on. And we already knew because he had been diagnosed. So
Yeah.
he was part of the program. Yeah.
Yeah. So
What was his diagnosis?
And honestly, I don't remember the exact diagnosis, but it was a problem because he would live on the streets and not want to continue his comp care services. And he would sometimes go to the detox just to sleep it off and then eat a little bit better, take a shower, and then go back out.
Back in the day, they would just go to the jail. They'd just get arrested and go to the jail.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I need to cut our conversation short here again. This is our own voice on KSN Community Radio. We are talking with Carlos, and we're going to take a quick break and be right back. Welcome back to Our Own Voice, a partnership in mental health awareness in cooperation with NAMI Wichita and KSUN Community Radio. NAMI is a National Alliance on Mental Illness. Now, David, normally before our break, we ask you to give us that information number, and so I'm doing it now because we need to hear what that information number is.
Yes, and this is for NAMI information, and it's 316-686-1373, or you can call 316-686-1373.
But it's the same number, right?
Yeah.
But I
Just
just
said
happen
differently.
I like it said the second way rather than the first way.
Yes, I know that.
But we are, you call that number and you have questions about a loved one or yourself, we will try to answer them. Do not call that number for an emergency, but please call. We have classes available. We have support groups available. NAMI is a nonprofit organization that David had mentioned earlier, but our whole goal is to help others. And one of our things we like to help with is reducing the stigma. And Carlos, do you have any stories about reducing stigma?
Well, I have this story. Another guy that I knew that was in a group, in an AA group. Actually, he was trying to do recovery, and he was married. He had a very nice wife. They were both working the 12-step program and whatnot. And then all of a sudden, their life started crumbling. You know, they started losing their children to the system. She was having some mental health problems that she finally had to address. But before that happened, she got in trouble with the law, getting drunk, using drugs and all that, until finally her mental health issues were addressed. I lost track of her, but I kept tabs on him a little bit. And at some point in time, I saw him on the homeless path. You know, he was walking that path, and he was there and looking at me. Hey, you know me? Yes, I know you. And he would look at me saying, oh, I'm happy. And I wouldn't even ask him a question, you know. But you could see in his eyes that he was sad. He was not doing very well. But he didn't find an answer. And later on, I heard about him that he was already back into the 12-step program. And he had declared there that finally he was able to put together at least 2 years of sobriety because he had addressed his mental health situation. He had accepted that he had that problem, that it was a problem because it would not let him not drink, not use, and not live on the streets, because that was the only way he could go. He's rebuilding his life and he's happier, and I hear that he's doing very well. So that's maybe also a self-inflicted stigma that
Yes,
he overcame.
definitely.
And I think that is important because I can see that situation happening. You know, to me, alcohol and drugs, alcoholism, drug addiction is an illness, like diabetes or cancer. You know, nobody asked for it. The same with mental health. You know, nobody asked for it. Now, once you know you have that situation, addiction, mental health, now you're responsible for that illness and to take care of it. Like the diabetic, he won't have to, drink soda or eat cake or whatnot. And the same with the alcoholic or the addict, and the same with the mental health. You're responsible for your illness, and you need to take care of it.
Yeah, very true. And you know, to piggyback on the whole issue of the diabetes, I understand that because I'm also diabetic. And one of the hardest things for me is cutting out sugar. And, you know, I confess I had coffee with sugar this morning. So
Yep,
it's an ongoing struggle.
yep. So you have to address it and, try. And there's relapse in alcohol and drug addiction, I know, very close to any other chronic illness. I'm sure there's relapse in mental health.
Yes, there is.
And I know a friend of ours actually has some mental health problems. And I know that one of the problems that she has particularly is that once she starts feeling well, after her medication has kicked in maybe for 6-8 weeks or a little bit longer, then she says, oh, I don't need the medication.
Yeah, that's a problem.
But back there goes to problems, and she's suffering it, but also her husband, also her daughters, and the people around her. So this is kind of a sad situation. It works pretty much like the alcoholic doesn't want people. Well, the alcoholic ends up alone or by himself or herself because of their illness. And the same situation in this case of this friend of ours, So you have to be responsible for your illness, take out the stigma, and do what you need to do in order to live a better life for yourself and for others, for your loved
Yeah,
ones.
very true.
Yeah.
Really fast for a closing question, do you have a hero or heroine?
Yes, I do have a hero. It's actually Roger Federer, the tennis player.
Okay.
He's been amazing.
Speaking of tennis, you also have a hobby that you enjoy doing. What is that hobby?
I like to run.
You like
Yes.
to run. That is so awesome.
Yep.
All right.
David
Well-
only runs when he's being chased.
That's right. So, and as long as I can outrun someone else, then I'm doing great.
Exactly,
So,
yeah.
well, I'm going to bring us to a close here. Thank you for joining us for Our Own Voice on KSUN Community Radio. Thank you to Carlos for talking with us about mental illness and about substance abuse. Join us for our next Our Own Voice program.